Good day everyone. Today I'm going to tackle about theories of race and ethnicity. Before I proceed to my discussion, my objective for this topic is first, can be able to identify issues of race and ethnicity and examine the four major of perspective in race and ethnicity. We can examine rather issues of race and ethnicity through this major: the functionalism, conflict theory, symbolic interactionism, and the culture of prejudice. So first is the functionalism. According to the functionalism, it examines society that interrelated parts that work together just like our human body. Without the different parts of our body, our body cannot function. In the view of functionalism, racial and ethnic inequalities must have served an essential function in order to exist as long as they have. This concept, of course, is problematic. How can racism and discrimination contribute positively to society? A functionalist might look at function and dysfunction caused by racial inequality. Racial inequality is functional for the dominant group because it ensures that society enjoy prosperity and stable and everyone knows the job for the dominant group. The dominant group is the white people in the American, and the minority group is the black people or the slaves. Then increase group solidarity among in-group members. This kind of solidarity is that the sense of awareness of the dominant group, because you know where you stand and how you act in the society. So if you're slaves, you are connected also to your slaves. Dysfunctional. It is dysfunctional because it costs a lot of money, time, and effort that make the relationship destroy, that lead to an unhealthy society. According to Nash 1964, he focused his argument on the way racism and functioning for the dominant group, that, for example, suggesting that racism morally justifies a racially unequal society. That consider the way slave owners justified slavery in the antebellum South by suggesting that black people were fundamentally inferior to white and preferred slavery to freedom. Another way to apply the functionalist perspective to racism is to discuss the way racism can contribute positively to the functioning of society by strengthening the bond between in-group members through the ostracism of out-group members. It also helpful by strengthening bond because the society can be united and functioning well. Then, on the other hand, Rose 1951 suggested that dysfunction associated with racism include the failure to take advantage of talent in the subjugated group, and that society must divert. Then the next is conflict theory. Conflict theories are often applied to inequalities of gender, social class, education, race, and ethnicity. So a conflict theory is like a league sports team which is competing in each team. So if you're in top 1, you don't want to be ranked down, that you need to maintain to the top 1. And also our society made of different group, the dominant group and the minority group competing with each other for power to accessible resources. A conflict theory perspective of U.S. history would examine the numerous past and current struggles between the white ruling class and racial ethnic minorities, nothing specific conflicts that have arisen when the dominant group perceive a threat from the minority. So, the minority group is low than the in the dominant group, because the dominant group is the white people and the minority group is the black people. In the late 19th century, the rising power of black Americans after the Civil War resulted in draconian Jim Crow laws that severely limited black political and social power. So the black people have a limited politic political and also a power. Then, for example, Vivian Thomas, 1910 to 1985, the black surgical technician who helped by developed by the groundbreaking surgical technique that saves the lives of blue babies, was classified as a janitor for many years and paid as such even though he was conducting complicated surgical experiment. The years since the Civil War have shown a pattern of attempted disenfranchisement with gerrymandering and voter suppression efforts aimed at predominantly minority neighborhood because to make sure that the white ruling class will be the dominant group according to gerrymandering and the voter suppression. Social science, the famous scholars Patricia Hill Collins 1994 developed intersection theory originally articulated in 1989 by Kimberly Crenshaw, which suggests we can separate the effect of race, class, gender, sexual orientation, and other attributes when we examine race and how it is can bring us both advantages and disadvantages. It is essential to acknowledge that the way we experience race is shaped, for example, by our gender and our place. Multiple layers of disadvantage intersect create the way we experience race. For example, if we want to understand prejudice, we must understand that the prejudice focus on a white woman because of her gender is very different from the layered prejudice focus on a poor Asian woman who is affected by stereotype related to being poor, being a woman, and her ethnic status. Then is the symbolic interactionism. For symbolic interactionists, race and ethnic provide powerful symbols as source of identity. Some interactionists propose that the symbol of race is not race itself or what lead to racism. Famed interactionist Herbert Bloomer, 1968, suggested that racial prejudice is formed through interaction between members of the dominant group. Without this interaction, individuals in the dominant group would not hold racist views. The symbolic interactionism is the race and ethnicity are the strong symbols. This interaction contribute to an abstract picture of the subordinate group that allows the dominant group to support its view of the subordinate group and thus maintain the status quo. An example of this might be an individual whose beliefs about particular group are based on images conveyed in popular media and those are unquestionably believed because the individual has never personally met a member of that group. Another way to apply the interactionist perspective is look at how people define their races and the race of others. As we discuss the social construction of race, since some people who claim a white identity have a greater amount of skin pigmentation than some people who claim black identity, how did they come to define themselves as black or white? Then the culture of prejudice. Culture of prejudice refers to the theory that prejudice embedded in our culture by advertisement and movies. We grow up surrounded by images of stereotypes and casual expressions of racism and prejudice. Consider the casually racist imagery in grocery store shelves or the stereotypes that fill popular movies and advertisement. It is easy to see how someone living in the northeastern United States who may know Mexican Americans personally might gain a stereotype impression from such sources as Speedy Gonzales or Taco Bell's talking. Because we are all exposed to these images and thoughts, it's impossible to know what extent they have influenced our thought processes. Then it is the intergroup relationship, the next topic. Intergroup relationship is the between different groups of people ranged along a spectrum between tolerance and intolerance. The most tolerant form of intergroup relation is the pluralism, in which no distinction is made between minority and majority groups, but instead there is equal standing. At the other end of the continuum are amalgamation, expulsion, ethnic cleansing, and even genocide stark examples of intolerant intergroup relations. That's all. Thank you.